Thank you for joining me today. A friend of mine, who I've known a long time, popped round yesterday bringing a pair of unlined curtains, and she also brought along these cushions. Now, I wouldn't mind, but I only did the cushions last year for her. But this is an upcycle, so I never complain about an upcycle. And she asked me to lengthen them for about 6 inches. So I'm limited with the amount of fabric I can get out of these 2 cushion covers. So let's get on with it. I don't want to be putting this on the bottom, mainly because it's going to look like I've extended the curtains. So I'm going to cut a little bit higher than that, so we've got the bottom, the inset and the rest of the curtains to do this project. But I don't want the band at the bottom to be the same size as here. I'm going to remove the zip off the bottom here because it twists both sides back. As this didn't have piping on it, it didn't need to have the zip put on one side and against the piping on the other. So I'm just going to undo this so that I can really open this up. It will save a lot of time if I do it that way. There is actually a pattern match on here, which is this one and this one. So I'm going to take that to the bottom of there and the bottom of there and drawing a line across. I'm not going to cut that just yet, because I need to make sure I've got 16 inches from there. My 16 comes to here, which means that's my 8, and there's another 8 there. So what I'll do is I'll measure down 8 and the 16 there, my 8 and 16 there, and I'm going to draw those across too. I have a kitten shouting. She's locked up in the bathroom so the dog can run around, and I'll swap them over. Let the dog have the back of the house and the kitten have the front. So here's my next row to be cut. Before I cut any of those, I'm going to just make sure that I've got this side even, and I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to work out where my pattern match is, like that, and draw down there, and I'll do the same on the other side. This is so that I know I've got everything I need. If I go there and there, that's my pattern match. So I'll just draw along here. Then I've cut all the seams off. I think most of the seams off actually. If I've got to undo anything, it won't be very much. I'm going to cut along here all the way to the top. The fabric's thick, so it's twisting, which is not what I want, but it will do. Across the top like this, and then I'll go down the side. There's a little bit of a seam that's sewn there, but most of it will have gone. I'm going to cut down here, which will give me my 8 inches. Now, I'm not going to be able to match any of these patterns, which is a bit irritating because I like patterns to match. Pop those like that, and I'm going to take a little corner off each front like this. That tells me that the bottom here is the way the pile goes. I'm going to cut the next 2 out of here. The other way of cutting things is cut whatever number you're using across, like this. And here again, turn it over and then cut the corner out just like I did. Just going to cut that down. And again, I'm going to measure across for my 8 inches, like this, all the way across. Flip it over, cut the corner. Now cut this one up. I don't want to have to take the hem off because the hem has already been put in. It would leave a mark, it would leave a line, and then I'd have to re-hem everything. So I'm not interested in doing it there. I've just divided this into 3 equal parts. The easiest way to divide something into either quarters or thirds is to fold it. So I have the top, the middle, and here's the bottom, but I need to add 6 inches into here. Now if I have 6 divided by 3, it's 2, so I'm going to take off 4 inches of the bottom third. That will bring it down to there. So that's going to be slightly shorter. I'm going to pop that there, like that. You always start curtains at the bottom, so fold that over to the other side, like that. Measure up from the bottom to here and put another pin there. Now I am going to measure it to make sure it's even, but basically I'm going to fold that across and cut that chunk off the bottom. I would suggest measuring up, but I know what's going to happen. Where this is, it's pulled the hem out of alignment, so I don't want it to be wonky going in. I want it to be even, and that's why I'm using this folding method, because otherwise it's not going to work. I am worried that this rolls. I think I'll fold it the other way and then it shouldn't roll against each other. So check out your fabric. Make sure that one way isn't going to do something weird. Let me fold that up evenly all the way across. That's 22.5 So hopefully this side's going to be 22.5 as well. 22.5. So I've got to cut 22.5 off the bottom. Make sure all of this is flat. It's going to take me a little minute to just make sure everything's where I want it to be. I'm going to take that out, put my scissors in there, hold everything, make sure it doesn't wriggle. It's going to wriggle a little bit, but hopefully not too much, and cut all the way across here to the other side. You know I wouldn't be able to help myself. What I've done is I've put the pieces that this part of the pattern goes up here together. I got to thinking I must have made them as identical as I could. Here again I've got that pattern going up, that pattern going up. So one curtain will have matching and the second panel will also have matching. Starting with the corner here and the corner here, both at the bottom of the fabric. I'm going to join these together. I'm going to sew up to the top, and I'm running the edge of the fabric along the side of my foot so I don't have a huge hem there, keeping both raw ends even. Pop it back under, a little bit over, so basically I'm running the raw edge along the groove in the foot here, and I'm going to put a straight edge with a zigzag going over there, and I'll shorten the length. So I'm just going to zigzag over the end here, and I'm going to repeat that on the next piece, on the side with the bit cut out on top, on a straight stitch first, and then on a zigzag second. So I've got all 4 pieces put together. Now I'm putting a zigzag on partly because there's no lining on the back, and also because I don't want this to fray either, so it's twofold. So that gives a bit of a serged look. It's not proper serging, but it will just hold everything where I need it. And now for the last piece on this band, and then I'll put the next band in and do it exactly the same way as this. Each side hem of these curtains has to be undone about 3 to 4 inches. So I have a nice open area for sewing from. If it's not out flat, then sometimes it twists, and that's not what I want to happen. This is the short length, so the bottom of the curtain, pop that under there like that. Then work out where the bottom of the fabric is. So I am going to pop that level with the ends there, line that up with the end here and the side there, pop that down. Something you need to think about is if you are patching fabric up, always have the lead edge of your curtains with the biggest piece. So if there's a little bit left over at the end, depending on what there is, you don't have everything too choppy where the curtains draw together. You want that nice, not lots of little pieces, unless you're doing something like a band with quilting. I mean, you could do that and then it wouldn't matter as long as everything flows. That's the priority, is that everything flows. So let's get this done, and I'm just going to sew it straight stitch all the way across. Now the only problem is this is a synthetic velvet, so it really doesn't have an up and down. This I think is more of a cotton velvet. It feels cottony here for the velvet, so it's more sturdy, so it will run against each other, which is a bit annoying, which means the fabric will walk as I'm sewing across. When I get to this join, I'm trying not to pull the fabric underneath, trying to keep it flat. The join I'm going to push away into the next piece like that. Just keep it as even as you possibly can. I've opened up the second seam for the bottom panel. I'm just going to sew into that. If it's not open enough, it's going to twist down, and I don't want that to happen. Let's go all the way across. This is the piece I've got left over, and if I pull that fabric down and I follow this up like that, I'll get a straight line. I'm going to open both ends of this part of the panel, which is the top, and start sewing in from each side. I know it sounds a bit odd. The reason is I'm worried that the top might walk more than the bottom, because it's a lightweight fabric, which means the pile is going this way and the pile on here is going down, and sometimes with a lightweight fabric it doesn't always work. I'm going to sew a portion of this with its 1/2 inch seam allowance to start it off, then it can't go anywhere. I'm going to hold this so I don't twist anything to the other end. Now before I do anything, let's see how straight that looks. I think it looks okay. So I'm going to open this end too, The reason I'm doing this is because I've already discovered on the other curtain panel that when I put the top in, there was a 1/2 inch shortage of the plain blue, and it took me nearly all the way across to get the top and the joined centerpiece in line, and I don't want to have to mess around with that again. That took quite a while to undo. My advice is always mess around. You never know which way something will go in or which way something won't go in. I'm actually wondering if that is actually level. Straighten that up, I think. So I'm going to pop this down on here and give it its 1/2 inch seam allowance, and so. I'm not pulling the top, I'm not pulling the bottom, I'm just going to let them lay flat together like that, and sew as evenly as I can across. And I'll get so far and then I'll see if it's going to even up, and if not, I'll sew from the other side. You really need where the side hems are going to go to be even. You don't want those to be wonky. Now the thing I do need to remember is when I put these seams in, they go this way, so I need to make sure that that stays the same. I don't want those wonky, so I need to iron those out shortly. Even if you'd used a faux suede or something like that, that would also have the same problem. When I get to halfway, I will see whether that looks like it's going to go in. I think that's nice and even. If I pull that and that, it evens out. It'll pull in where it needs to. And just remember that the top or the bottom that I just put in is the same width as this, so it can't do anything but go in evenly. Now, as I did before, I'm going to just zigzag across the top of here on both sides, and that stops anything fraying. There's going to be quite a bit of bulk if I fold the side hem over, so keep both pieces of fabric down, go across, and then up an angle that side, and the same on this side. Actually, I'm going to go down like that, quite close to the seam at the top there. I've lined where I'm going to be stitching up with the original stitches, about an inch, inch and a half towards the back there. Fold that over with the seam going up. And when I get closer to the area that I'm going to be refolding, fold that into position, and then fold that into position, trying to keep it nice and even. Keeping this folded, I'm going to work this in as straight as I possibly can. It might wobble a little bit, but as long as it doesn't wobble too much or go at a funky angle, we'll be fine. Make sure that this seam is flat and going down, so it's like that. And I'm going to overstitch to about here because that's where my original stitches are. Neaten all the threads up. Now I went for a slightly darker thread because I knew that it would match this, and I also knew that it would hide rather than show against the blue at the top. It's not exact, but it's close enough that nobody's going to notice. Now I'm going to do the other side. You'll notice that although this is cut back, once that folds over it, there's hardly any seam there, and then there, and of course it's at the right height here, so it won't look as if I've done anything strange. And the same with the bottom. Once that's all folded in, nobody will notice that I cut any fabric back. Make sure that's even. It's really this front edge I need even. Cut those threads out before I start sewing across. And about an inch over the original stitches. I'm just going to iron these up. The seam goes this way, but lots of steam on there. I'm only going to be pressing where that join is. Plenty of steam. And then I'll go on to the next one. I've only got 3 to do, so it's nothing major. Do it from the back first. The velvet goes down this way, so I'm just going to iron and steam down so that that's really pushed into place. I could top stitch it. To be honest, having an open seam would have been better, but I really didn't want to be messing too much. As I say, this was an upcycle project and it's for her laundry. It's not like it's for her living room or a dining room or a kitchen where people are going to see it all the time. I'll take that out in a sec. This is when I talk about the lead of the curtain. That's this end. The bitty bit at the end is the bit that goes to the wall. There we go. I'm pleased with that. The other nice thing is, although I put 8 inches in and we lost 2 inches, the inset piece is 7 inches. So it's a nice bold statement. You could get away with putting a narrow one in, but if I was to put narrow ones in, I would maybe put 2 in. So you really have to manage to do your maths in order to get everything right, but only to make it sort of more of a statement than you just didn't have long enough curtains, which you would have had if you just put that pattern on the bottom there. Is like, oh, you didn't have enough. So although technically she didn't have enough fabric for the curtains and we've done this, it looks like it was meant to be. Thank you for joining me today. The curtains, I think, have turned out really well. The thirds are basically 2/3 of the blue at the top and 1/3 at the bottom, with the band going in the middle to join them. So if you wanted to adjust that, you could flip it and put the band higher up. It's really up to you where you want to. Just don't put it through the centre, because that dissects everything. So you got halves, and you don't work in halves, you work in threes, or you work in odd numbers, not even numbers. But personally, I think she's going to be thrilled with this. If you want to hear more from me, please subscribe, hit the bell button, and a few thumbs up would be absolutely brilliant. And in the meantime, see you later. Ciao.